Okay, so I'm happy with the way the blue's looking. Now I've mixed up a little bit of a puddle of dark using, I believe that's my French Ultramarine. I've got so many blues out there that I've lost track. But that's what that looks like. Then I do have the burnt umber here and alizarin. Just going to keep mixing until it's the color I want. So if it's a little too red, I'm going to add a little bit more blue and burnt umber. If it starts looking too green, I'll add a little bit more red. If you figure out what is across from your color on the color wheel, you'll find out how to neutralize the color you just mixed. So red and green are across from each other. So I know if I have a puddle of color that I think is too red, I can add green and tone that color back a little bit. So I don't have to mix up a ton of paint here because it's not a very big area. And I've got a number 2 Utrecht here. It's almost too big, but I'm going to go with it. And I'm just going to add the eye. A little bit down on the corner, a little almond shape. And it's pretty thick. I can lift out a little bit to kind of give it a little touch of a highlight. Maybe even add in some burnt orange there to give it a little bit of interest. That's why for FYI, why I like to mix my own darks, because tube darks typically can be pretty flat. So if you have mixed your own darks, it's a little bit more interesting when it dries. It's not quite so flat. And I'm just going to touch in a little bit, trying to get a watery mix of that burnt orange. There we go. Just a little touch of that. I can always darken it back up again if I need to. Okay, so we're going to come over to this guy's, this eye, I should say. And also a teardrop shape. Or almond shape, I should say. It's kind of a teardrop. And this side actually has a little bit of an eyelid. I don't want that to overpower anything though, so I kept it to the blue. Maybe do the same thing over here, a little touch of the burnt orange. Just kind of dotting that in, tapping it in. Of course, now that it's starting to dry, it's looking a little like an evil eye. So I'm going to add back in some dark here. I don't want that evil glow. Cancel that thought. Okay. Now for the nose, I'm going to go up a size to my number 4. Got more area to cover, so I don't want to be dabbing too much. I'm going to get this part wet. The front of the nose here is a little bit darker. Up in the front, I'm just going to touch that in and let it spread. I'm going to come up over the top here and just add some cobalt, because it's not black on that side. It's reflecting a little bit of the sky. A little bit of a curve there. And just not getting too carried away with what's going on in there. I don't want to paint nostrils and, you know, get all hung up in that part, because I don't think it's necessary. Really not that much more to go on this if we're keeping it simple, which I try to keep it simple, but sometimes it just is there's too much. But I am going to add his little nails in here while I have that dark mixed up, and touch in a little bit of color next to it so they kind of blend. I don't want it to be standing out too much. A little bit more blue, kind of a shadow over there, so I can play that up a little bit. We can do the same a little bit over here. Give that some form. All right, I'm gonna let those little portions dry so I don't drag my hand through it, and then come back and do some, maybe actually some layering in here. In fact, I could probably do that without turning off the camera. So let's get a little petal mixed up of some dark again. Green, ultramarine, burnt umber, oh, good grief, a little bit of red on my brush. Not to fear, not to fear, not to fear. We're just gonna spread it out. Just hopefully help that to look more rock-like. All right, I do like that. So maybe even add just a little up there, more blue. Now I'm going to let that dry and come take a step back, look at it, see what I can do to finish this guy up. Okay, I have stepped back, and I could take this a lot farther, but for the sake of keeping this video a little bit on the shorter side, which I know it's already pretty long, I'm just going to finish it up. And there's just a couple of little final thoughts here. I feel like this needs just a touch more of a shadow. So I'm just going to touch in just a little bit A little bit less than that, and lift some of it back up again. So that's going to be plenty. And maybe just a little bit more in here. Very slight amount. Again, I don't want too much. I want that edge to have a glow to it, so I'm not going to mess with it too much. Little bit more in here, and just ever so slight amount of shadowing in there. In here. Put that color in, and then come along this other edge here and just spread that out a bit. I want a little bit more cobalt. Kind of push that back a little bit. That blue, that cobalt is cooler, so that was coming forward too much, so I wanted to push it back a little bit, and by adding the cobalt to it, that is effective for doing that. A little bit more contrast in here. And I can just add a little bit of detail here and there. Very light flicks of my brush. Has just the slightest amount of color on it. A little bit deeper in his ear on that side. Okay, I am gonna put that aside, and that is gouache, but I want fresh. So I'm gonna touch a bit of fresh gouache in here. It's too hard to get a good visible stroke of gouache with dry gouache. So I'm going to go with my little #2 and just add some little touches of fur here and there. So I'm going to start in and flick out, see what happens. Plus, gouache dries darker, so if it's wet, it's going to be too diluted, and it's going to dry too light. You're not going to be able to see it. So, although you do need it a little bit fluid, let's go in here, get a couple little fur. Very slight. I do want to do a little bit up in there where I lost the... I lost it up there. And... ever so subtle. Touch in a couple little extras up there too. Don't know if this is necessary, but maybe just a touch right there. All right, I'm going to leave it as is. Actually, I was going to do something. I was tempted to do something with that background. But if I put a mat around it, it may not be the mat I use completely, but I do like it cropped a little bit. You don't necessarily need to show that whole upper part. So even though his paw's a little bit cut out, you can adjust it a smidge and voila, I think we've got a really pretty painting. So one thing to keep in mind when signing a painting is make sure that you don't cut your signature out with your mat. So if you are going to crop it, make sure you haven't like signed it in a place where the mat's going to crop it out. Now I'm going to sign this probably right under here. So I don't have that issue, but it's just something to keep in mind. So I like to put a mat around it and then figure out where I'm going to put my signature from there. But I like the idea of it being right under this paw. And I like to sign my paintings small. I just always have. I don't want a big giant signature in bright red. I would rather be more subtle than that. So I'm just going to grab blue. I'm going to go with dark. And I've got this teeny tiny little #1 round with a very dark mix of French Ultramarine, Hooker's Green, and Burnt Umber. And I will go ahead and just sign this. Could sign it here, but I like it over here a little bit more in. So I'm going to just very small sign my name. And call it done. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for hanging in there with me. I know it was long, but in all reality, these things take a while to paint. What you see sometimes on YouTube or whatever, it isn't the whole process. So it takes some time and thought, and sometimes multiple times. I have to say that. I paint things more than once. A lot of times it just doesn't come together like I want it to, so I start over. And you learn something in that process too. So all that being said, I hope that you give it a try anyway and learn your own lessons and have some success. And if you feel like you didn't have success, remember that you learn through the process. So take care, you guys. Until the next video, I hope you have a happy New Year now, because I'm just finishing this and it's coming into the new year. So happy painting in the new year. Let's celebrate our successes and embrace our failures. And with that, we will see you in the next video. Take care, you guys. Happy painting. Bye-bye.